Hello and a very warm welcome back to Tim Roadie Rides Motorbikes. I'm Tim, I've got a fly on my head, I've also got the plague, so excuse me sniffles, but I'm here to tell you that adventure bikes are dead. At least according to Suzuki, who's just brought out a proper old school sports tourer, the GSX S1000GT, which is a bit of a mouthful, but this is one of the best value bikes you can currently buy. It's £11,700, it's got 150 horsepower and is a really, really good package. So I'm going to take you for a ride, do a walk around of it, hopefully not get blinded by the sun, oh god that's a bit bright isn't it, and find out why you should buy one. Have I said that? You should buy one. Yeah, normally £11,799 doesn't get you a whole lot of motorbike, but it does in this case. And in terms of finance, this bike's £200 a month with just £1,000 down as a deposit. So yeah, it's a Billy bargain, this bike. It comes in three colours, bright blue, and it comes in this metallic reflective blue, or there's black, like my soul. Now, before we get into it too much, I want to talk about some of the options you can get on this bike that turn it into a proper sports tourer, namely the 36-litre hard panniers. This bike obviously hasn't got them on. They're about £1,000. They're £990 once you've paid for the panniers, the brackets, the locks, and what Suzuki calls the garnishes, which are the coloured plastic panels to match the body colour of the bike. So yeah, it's an extra £1,000 if you actually want to tour on this with hard luggage. Suzuki can't let the 90s go either, and it will sell you rim tape for 20 quid and some carbon fibre bits, which are quite expensive. Carbon fibre front mudguard is 400 quid for this bike. You can also get red calipers for £564, not sure why you'd want to do that. You can also get a 70mm taller screen for £193 and heated grips are £400, which feels like quite a lot of money. But anyway, let's talk about the looks of this briefly, because it's a curious looking thing. It almost looks a bit like an R1 that's had a nose job. It's a bit, don't know, Daniela Westbrook or something. Yeah, I quite like it. It's certainly a bit interesting, and I think Suzuki's actually moved in quite an interesting direction. You've got these LED headlights here, which look very Yamaha to my eyes. I'm not sure about the slightly old school indicators, they look a little bit cheap to me. But otherwise, it's classic sports tourer, really. You've got normal 17-inch front wheel, you've got a nice little trellis frame on this, and the frame, apart from the subframe, is from the GSX S1000F, which this kind of replaces. But yeah, you've got this nice trellisy subframe, which just lends it a little bit of class. The seat height is nice and approachable. It's just under 32 inches or 810mm. It's very manageable, this. It weighs about 223 kilos wet, I think. The tyres are probably one of my least favourite things about this bike. They are Dunlop Road Sport 2s, and they just have a slightly weird profile. It doesn't give me masses of confidence, so I would change those if I bought one of these. Round the back, you've got an LED tail light as well, which just to me looks a little bit undesigned. It's just plonked on there, looks a little bit part spin, and you've got these really uggo side reflectors on the back as well. Got a tank pad, that's on the optional extras list. But really, for your £12,000, the main thing you're getting is that iconic Suzuki 999cc inline 4, originally derived from the GSX R1000K5 from 2005, which obviously we know BMW nicked for the S1000RR, sort of. It's got 152 horsepower, 11,000 RPM. It's got a really, really lovely sweet throttle response, nice airbox how. It's a little bit snatchy in A mode, bit of B mode is a bit softer, and we'll talk about the riding modes in a second. It's got a 19-litre fuel tank. It gets about 46 mpg, so you'll get about 180 miles or something to a tank. It's got an up-down quick shifter as standard. It's got cruise control. It's got smartphone connectivity, and it's got quite a nice dashboard as well. It doesn't look like a budget bike up here. It takes a little while to turn on, but it does show you your speed before it fully boots up. But there, it's really, really straightforward. Lovely kind of fake analog rev counter. You've got a range readout down there. You've got your trips and everything, and it's nice and easy to change your traction control settings and all the rest of it as well. Cruise control is all handled down there. It's just, I don't know, it's just straightforward, no nonsense. I quite like that. You've also got a USB socket under here as well. You've got a little weather protected cap. The mirrors are quite stable. They're quite far away. If you look, they're perched on the nose fairing, so they are a bit of a stretch to adjust on the move, but it's not impossible. But anyway, that's probably enough waffle. It's a very simple bike, really. The proof of how good it is in the riding. So let's go and ride it. All right, let's take the GSX S1000GT, there's 1,000 in there somewhere, for a ride. And apologies if I get a bit out of breath doing this. I've got this plague thing, which means I've got all the lung capacity of a pygmy goat that has a 3-packet-a-day habit. I don't know what's wrong, to be honest. But anyway, like all Suzuki inline fours, it fires up almost instantly, and it's got a nice deep burble. It is Euro 5 compliant, obviously, but it's certainly just got a nice old school inline 4 sound. The riding position is probably the first thing you notice when you hop on this bike. It's just very easy, it's just very relaxed. My knees aren't too bent, I don't have to reach for the bars, everything is just, I think it comes to you really. It's just very, very relaxed, which is nice. You then notice that the engine has got lovely amounts of mid-range torque. It's not, I don't know, it's not tear your face off amounts of mid-range. And I think if you read motorbike magazines in the mid-noughties, you would think that the K5 engine was this ridiculously hairy-chested thing. It certainly doesn't feel ridiculous in the mid-range, shall I say, in 2022. But as we'll discover in a bit, it's got a nice top end to it. Foot pegs are a bit slippery, that's because my feet are covered in mud. But yeah, the mirrors on this bike are really good. They don't blur very much, if at all. And they're a really nice place actually, nice and far away from you. So you can just sit back, enjoy the ride and stay on top of everything. Now the ride, the suspension, does feel a little bit pitter-pattery over kind of slightly bumpy roads like this. It just, I don't know, it does feel a little bit cheap at times. I would say 90% of the time it's fine, but on certain roads like this you think, oh yeah, it is not as composed or plush as a adventure bike would be. But hey, it's not an adventure bike, it's something else entirely, and it's certainly got a directness to its steering and its chassis and a connection that an adventure bike just really can't match, which we'll find out when I get some twisty faster roads in a minute. But anyway, I'm going to get to some dual carriageways, talk about what it's like at motorway speeds, and I'll see you there, if I don't die first. We've cut the hedges, thank God. Okie dokie, I'm about to go from a 50 limit up to 70 miles an hour dual carriageway, so we can talk about how this puppy feels on the motorway, which should be very exciting. Anyway, it's actually dried out. Third gear, up to 70. Yeah, this engine's pretty docile for about 6,000 RPM, and then it really does get a nice top end rush. But yeah, 70 miles an hour, I'm getting quite a lot of wind blast there, kind of where I don't want it from the screen. And as I said at the start, it's not adjustable, but you can get that quite a bit taller touring screen. I'm reasonably tall, I'm 6'3", so obviously take one for a test ride to find out if that affects you. But yeah, it's pretty loud, to be honest. I've got earplugs in, I've got a neck buff on. It's okay, it's nice clean air, it's not buffety, it's not turbulent, it's not shaking me about like a vibrator in an elephant party. It's just, I don't know, it's alright. I've got a fuel gauge as well. Have I mentioned that? I've got a fuel gauge as well as a range readout. The cruise control is very easy to set as well. You just use this little button on the right hand cluster to turn it on, and then you use the set or resume buttons over here to set your speed, and you can increase your speed as well. The switch gear doesn't feel cheap really. It's just not particularly stylish. It's alright, it's alright. Anyway, that's all fairly boring stuff to talk about. Let's get to some twisty faster roads where we can open it up a bit and talk about the handling, because it's very good. Just before I get to my nice twisty road, I just think this bike knows what you need and what you don't need. It hasn't got a 6-axis IMU, so the traction control and ABS isn't lean sensitive, but you know, that's going to cost loads more money, and do you really need it? I don't know if you do. Would you rather save a couple of grand and have a bike that's got, you know, a lot of stuff other than that? I think I probably would. Don't want to get too philosophical about it, but this feels like a well-judged bike. Well done, Suzuki's product planners. Has anyone ever said that in a video before? How boring. But anyway, let's give it some stick. traction control kicky in there, stop a bit of wheel spin in first gear. Yeah, I really like the way this bike handles. It just rolls into corners really naturally, and it kind of loves fast sweeping bends. It just feels very planted, very tied down, in that kind of classic sports tourer sense really. It's not like an adventure bike, whereas you get to advanced, possibly not fully legal speeds, they can get a bit wallowy and a bit unsure. This, you kind of feel like you could take it to parts of Germany where there are twisty roads and do very, very fast cornering on it, and it would feel absolutely blissful. But you know, even on a bumpy Surrey B road, is a joy. Is a real joy, this bike. I like the airbox how it's probably not going to come across on camera, but obviously being an inline 4 1000cc, you're still going to ring it out, and when you do ring it out, you are going faster than I should probably show on YouTube. But yeah, certainly at the top of the revs in first and second gear, it feels potent. The front wheels coming up a little bit, and obviously traction control looks after you, but you can turn it off really easily if that is your bag, if you want to do some dank clutch ups or what have you. I can't, so I haven't. But yeah, this it's just a really nice bike to live with, and I'll be sad to see it go back. And it's, in some ways it feels like a more sophisticated, much cheaper Japanese version of a Suzuki GT, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's because that's the most recent sports tourer-y thing that I've ridden, but yeah, it certainly feels like you could save, you know, £7 over one of those and have just as much fun. Well, maybe not quite as much fun, but not far off. As usual, I forgot to mention one or two things in that. One thing that I'm not too keen on this bike sometimes is the brakes. The brake feel can feel a bit wooden at the lever. They're fine, they do the job really well, but they just don't give you loads of feedback. Other thing, which is good, is how flexible the engine is. I'm going through a 30 limit, I've got the cruise control set, and I'm in 5th gear. It's just bimbling along. It's just lovely. Anyway, let's go back to me for an outro. So in conclusion, if I was to sit on the floor awkwardly next to a motorbike to tell you what I think about it, this is a really, really lovely package. Often do-it-all bikes can come across as a bit dull, but this is anything but. It's a bit like a vicar at a rave. It can be polite when you want it to be, and it can go bananas as well. I would say the engine isn't quite as naughty as it could sound, certainly, but certainly the performance is absolutely ballistic when you want it to. Downsides, I would say the ride on broken surfaces can sometimes feel a little bit not quite nicely damped, and the tyres don't give me loads of confidence, but that's about it. For the money, this is a hell of a lot of bike, and if you don't need an adventure bike, this really can do it all. It can scratch, it can do wheelies, it can go fast, it can just bimble around and get decent MPG as well. So well done, Suzuki. You've made something that's on paper a bit old-fashioned, but in reality still very, very relevant, and a reminder that we don't all need adventure bikes. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful. If it was, please hit like, and also go down to the comments and call me a hat, but in Japanese. Might have to get on Google Translate for that. And also subscribe as well, because there's plenty more of this nonsense coming soon once I've shifted my chest infection. Lovely. See you soon.